Good morning, board staff and members of the public. After my statement, the chairman will open this meeting and explain the rules for this electronic meeting. Please keep your microphone on mute when you are not speaking. The technical support team may proactively mute participants if the microphone is picking up background noise. Board members should check to make sure the microphone is not muted before speaking. You may text me at 540-336-3948 at any time during the meeting if you need technical support, and an IT tech will call your cell to assist. I now turn the meeting over to Committee Chairman Bonfils.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome to this meeting. I'll read the chairman's open statement, and then I'll have a few words. Due to the local state of emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic, the Loudoun Water Board is meeting today by electronic means pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3708.2A3. Public notice for the meeting access information was provided on the Loudoun Water website. A recording of the meeting will be available for using this link, and that's on our website. The board members wishing to speak are reminded to press unmute to it and identify themselves by name so that the staff can accurately capture comment. All items will be recommended to the February 10th, 2022 board meeting. The board secretary will now take roll attendance for committee members.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bonfils?
I'm here.
Mr. Allen?
Here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
And Mr. Sultan?
Here.
I'd also like to acknowledge that Ms. Sursa Carr, Chairman Koblis, and Mr. Kelly are on the call.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited that all of you are here, and I wish we were in person, but we'll do the best we can with Microsoft meetings. Today, on the agenda, I'm sure everybody has read it. We have a presentation about our IT and security by one of our leading deputy directors, Michael, and he is well known in the industry, and I'm really looking forward to this presentation. This will be a very open discussion. Feel free to ask questions, raising your hand and using those tools. But let's go ahead and get started.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is Mark, and I'm going to just give Mike a little setup, a little intro. I wanted to first say good morning and Happy New Year to you all. And it's great to see such a good turnout here. It's a fun way to start the year out here. We technically this is kind of the fourth quarter sort of theme in our series, and it's tough to get this scheduled here with everything else going on at the end of the year. So it's a great way to start. But just as a quick reminder for this, for our committee, we've kind of established here a series in sort of some themes with kind of the early last year, starting with an education outreach theme. And then the second quarter, we talked and shared a number of things about our water quality related program and activities. Third quarter is water supply related. And then this sort of fourth quarter is an operational theme, is kind of the way we've called it. It's kind of getting into some of our day-to-day operations that you don't get to see. So, with that, and we've got those kinds of topics kind of continuing that theme throughout here the course of the year. But for today's topic, just the quick intro again. You've for the longtime board members, you've seen many of the different technology tools and platforms kind of come through in terms of when we've implemented those. And we've got some great tools that Mike and his team and others, are able to utilize. And we're at the stage now where we're really integrating those into the daily business and integrating those tools together. And we thought, a good opportunity here to kind of share that. It's not something we get to share with you all the time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike and let him run with it.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Let me just take a quick technology check. Hopefully you folks can see my screen and hear me okay. You get a thumbs up?
Yes.
That's great. Okay. Thank you for that setup, Mark. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm excited about the opportunity to share this story with you. Before I get started, I want to mention that this is really the story about some amazing folks here at Loudoun Water. There's really a team of folks that I've been working behind the scenes for over a decade, really, in bringing all these technologies and capabilities to life. Some of them are on the call with us here. Andy Kraft, our Director of Operations Technology. Mark Wonka, I think, should be joining us, and a number of folks that work on the information technology and operations technologies teams over the years to bring all this together. So they deserve credit for all of these accomplishments. I'd like to thank also our internal business stakeholders for their support. Our business makes all this possible. They're the ones that support this and use our technology. And we have a great relationship with them, and also Carla and the rest of the deputy general managers for their support. And also I'd like to thank the board. You folks have been supportive over the years. You have approved many of these major initiatives, and you've made a lot of this possible as well. So thank you again. So I will jump into the agenda here, and so you should see the agenda slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences in the different types of technologies, IT versus OT. Then we'll talk about some framework. So these are really more philosophical things that I think about, our team members think about when we govern our technologies. We'll talk about some of the strategies and how we tackle ROI. Then we'll talk about our major technology investments that we've made over time. So we'll give you a sense of that. And then we'll talk to you about how all of those things come together to support the various operational processes and programs here at Loudoun Water. And we'll talk a little bit about what we're planning for the future. And I've got a couple of demonstrations sprinkled in. I'll share that one of them I just tested yesterday, worked just fine. It's not working this morning, so but I'll flex around that. We still have some stuff to show you. Right, so a little bit about the different types of technology at Loudoun Water. Information technology is probably what you normally think of when you think of computer systems. And so these are the computer systems that run our business. So it's things like SAP, which is at the heart of our business enterprise, as you're probably aware. But it's other systems too. It's our laboratory information management system. It's our AMI system, which collects our meter reads. It's email. It's our customer portal. So if I'm kind of going around the the graphics here, it's our customer portal, LW Connect. It's our call center. It's actually the telephony technology that our customer service agents use to take calls. And it's our mobile field work order applications as well. So all of these are information technology. They're our business systems. And we differentiate that between IT versus OT. So operations technology, that's the technology that keeps the water, the wastewater, and the reclaimed water treated and flowing. And we often refer to operations technology as SCADA. That's a bit of a legacy term, although you'll probably hear me use both, but just to frame it up for you, you may be familiar with both terms. It includes the physical instruments, the sensors, and the control devices that actually operate the water and wastewater systems. So that open and close valves, that turn on and off pumps, that actuate chemical feeds. All of those things are part of the operations technology system. And then it's also the computer systems that sit on top of that and allow the operators to control those physical devices. So kind of a good way to think of that, this is the Trap Rock control room, and our operators sit in this control room every day, and they're able to control the entire plant from that hub. So that's operations technology in action. And we have a similar control room for Broad Run. If I didn't mention this, please jump in if you have any questions. Either raise your hand or just go ahead and jump in and interrupt me. All right, so a little bit about technology framework. I want to give you a sense of, again, how we think about technology, how we approach our technology investments at Loudoun Water. And I start with this idea of IT as a business transformation. I think this is a really important point for us. Back in 2015, our team went through a transformation that really shifted us from a technology focus to much more of a business focus. And what that means for me and my team members is that we run IT like a business. To draw on that analogy a little bit more, if you think of from our perspective, IT creates new products. We deliver projects. We have customers and stakeholders. We have a supply chain. We have our own internal processes for operations and maintenance. We make investments. We manage expenses. And we manage technology solutions throughout their entire life cycle, from plan, design, build, operate, maintain, and retire, just like we do our water systems, right? So there's definitely some parallels. It might be network cables instead of pipes, but many of the same management principles apply. So going a little further down, we have a really strong focus on project delivery, especially since our launch of SAP, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. I consider our project delivery process to be kind of one of our crown jewels. We have a great track record, and I think you'll see that in a few minutes, of delivering complex technology projects over the last several years. So this is one of our strongest processes here. We also like to say there's no such thing as IT projects. There are only business enablement projects, which leads me into this point, that our projects are business led, and it's a partnership with the technology. It's a 51% ownership by the business, and then 49% owned by technology. We don't implement technology for the sake of technology. Everything is done for the sake of our business processes and business requirements. The next note here is we have this really strong business solutions team that is focused on helping us adopt and use our technology, and that's within the IT group. They're focused on analyzing business problems and coming up with solutions, and those solutions may be technologies, but they also might be process changes. So they're not focused on just delivering technology for the sake of technology. They really provide the bridge between business and technology, and they help us harvest value from these solutions that we've implemented. In your organization, you might call them business analysts. We call them solution managers. It's pretty analogous in terms of their role. The other thing I'd like to mention here is we make investments in technologies, and I like to think of them in three different buckets. They're in either a sustain bucket, where we're really sustaining the organization, sustaining the existing capabilities and meeting existing requirements, or we're growing some new capability because we're growing as an organization. We might need a new tool just to keep pace with our growth, or we might need to expand the use of an existing system. And then innovation is the third bucket, where we're really doing something new. We're meeting a new business requirement, or we're doing business in a new way. And so those are the three different ways in which we invest. All of those are driven by business drivers. We try to weave in return on investment calculations particularly into our major investments, so that we ensure that we're getting value. And then there's a hook for our major investments to the strategic plan. So you will see in our strategic plan that we have this exceptional operations goal area, and within that goal area are a number of technology related initiatives and business initiatives which have a technology component. So there's this strong linkage between what we're doing on the technology side, where we're making our investments, and what we have said is important to us from a strategic plan standpoint. So this graphic over here just gives you a sense of some of the functions and how technology services breaks down. So operations technology is, just broadly speaking, broken down into these three different functions. One function is the process control applications, kind of the front end applications and the data that feeds them. Then there's teams that work on the actual instrumentation, the physical instrumentations, and the calibration of those sensors. And then finally, there's the more traditional network server storage, the day-to-day operations of the computer systems. On the IT side, it's a little bit different. Again, we have that business solutions team that's focused on process and bridging between technology and the business. And then there's a team that's focused on the governance of our enterprise applications, and there's a couple of different functions there. And then finally, there's a team that focuses on what you might consider the more traditional IT, that's the running the servers, the storage, the network, the security, and so forth. So this next slide, I want to describe some of the technology strategies that we've adopted, both when we think about governing the existing technology systems and also selecting new technologies. So the first one, of course, is resilience. We want solutions that have redundancy built into them. that have disaster recovery and failover capabilities. For example, our SCADA systems have hot standby servers, certain PLCs have redundant backups, and we test our disaster recovery capabilities. We also want solutions that are elastic, that will grow with us as we grow, so that we don't have to adopt a new solution, but can instead build on top of an existing solution. So that's important to us because we're continuing to grow as an organization. And then security, obviously of paramount importance, both on the IT and the OT side. Security and you know, you've seen the attacks in the news, and this is something we need to be constantly vigilant about. We really put our vendors to the test particularly when selecting new solutions, to make sure that they're up to standard. There are two strategies in particular that apply to operations technology. One is safety. So we really think about safety from a personnel and equipment and so forth perspective. So just making sure that we're deploying solutions in a safe manner and in a manner that facilitates safety. And then also permit compliance. So on the operations technology side, of course, we're operating treatment processes and we're collecting data that feeds our regulatory reporting and requirements. And so permit compliance is of high importance from an operations technology perspective. Some other strategies include leading edge. So we like to say that we're leading edge, but not necessarily bleeding edge. So we're not going to be the first adopter of a solution. We want to pick solutions that are proven, although we will pick solutions that haven't been in the marketplace for a long time if we think it's a good fit for us. But again, we're not going to be the first adopter. We think that's often too risky for us.
Hey, Mike, Angeline has her hand up.
Yes, Mr. Sakar?
Good morning, Mike. I just have a question. Just reflecting back, I won't take too much of your time because I respect you're in the presentation mode. I just have a very pressing question in regards to security. Just go back a little bit when you talked about security. What are some of the security implementations do we have in place in terms of cybersecurity intelligence?
So there are multiple layers of defenses on both the information technology and the operations technology side of things. So, for example, and most of these are standard, right? Firewalls, antivirus, network access control devices, event logging and monitoring. We have a third-party SOC that helps us identify and track events and respond to events. So that it's pretty standard stuff. We also have policies that are in place, security awareness campaigns and training and so forth. And then on the operations technology, it's a whole different suite of technologies. Some of them parallel the IT side. Some of them are quite different and provide more visibility into east-west traffic on the operations technology network, as well as specific changes that might take place on the actual control devices. And both of those, frankly, are pretty advanced for an operations technology environment. And Mr. Sakar, if you have more detailed questions beyond that, I know you have an interest in this area, I would propose that we take it offline. There are some sensitive aspects to our security, which probably would be not discussed in an open meeting. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. We will take it offline. Absolutely. Thank you. Keep going.
Happy to answer those. Yep. Okay, so I was describing leading edge and then software as a service and cloud first. So this is a philosophy that we take particularly for the information technologies. We really like to adopt software as a service, and cloud so that's a flavor of cloud. And one of the reasons for that is that cloud really provides us a benefit because it's always up to date, it's always patched. You're really shifting the workload to the vendor. And what that allows us to do is it allows our internal resources to focus on innovation and business process improvements rather than the more mundane day-to-day maintenance of those systems. So there's a real benefit to cloud first as a strategy. And the second point here, which kind of goes hand in hand, is an evergreen approach. And what that means is that we adopt solutions that are always up to date, self-patching. And so that's true typically of cloud solutions, but there's also some on-premise components like our browsers, our operating system, Microsoft Office. Those are always patched and up to date. And again, our team members spend less time maintaining those solutions, more time innovating and providing value to our customers. This next item is SAP and Microsoft centric, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about those, but these are really pillars of our environment. So we're very much an SAP and Microsoft centric organization for the new technologies that we select. And then we have a mobile/work from anywhere strategy, which I'll touch on a little bit later in the presentation. I wanted to provide a sense here of some of the ways in which we've calculated return on investment for some of the technologies that we've selected. So this is just picking off a couple of examples. It doesn't cover the gamut of everything where we've done return on investment, but hopefully it gives you a sense of the thoughtfulness that we approach some of the investments that we make. And so looking at the first one here, mobile work orders, we implemented a mobile work order solution back in 2016. When we did that, we conducted a return on investment assessment for how much time we would save from a windshield time perspective. We also tried to monetize what would be the benefit of improved data quality because you're collecting it in the field, where the events happen, where the work orders are actually executed. And we also were faced with a challenging decision in this project. We were looking at two solutions. One was a proven SAP integrated solution. The other was a proven but not SAP integrated solution. Normally we would pick the SAP integrated solution, but the delta in cost between those two solutions was over $1 million. And so we assessed carefully, could we make this alternate solution? I call it the Escalade versus the Ford Explorer. Could we make the Ford Explorer work? What are we going to have to do to make that happen? And ultimately, we chose the Ford Explorer, and actually that's been an excellent decision for us. We saved a great deal of money, and it's been an excellent solution. We had to work a little harder to make it integrated, but it's worked out well. You may remember that we moved SAP from on-premise to the Microsoft Cloud back in 2018, and we performed a full lifecycle, 10-year lifecycle assessment of what the return on investment would be for the various options for our SAP environment. There were several upgrades we had to make, and also we had to decide where we were going to host it. And so we went through that whole process, and ultimately we chose to move it to the cloud. This next one is about an SAP procurement module. You may recall that we implemented SAP in 2014, and along with it, a procurement module. So that was, again, back in 2014. And over time, we discovered that that particular procurement module was overkill for us. And so eventually, we chose to decommission it back in 2020. That doesn't mean we don't do procurement in SAP. We do. It has some native capabilities. We just didn't need this extra capability. And so we decommissioned it in 2020. And then we adopted a third-party procurement portal, which doesn't have, or it has minimal SAP integration. And again, we had a choice between an SAP solution versus this non-SAP third-party solution, and there was a significant cost difference. And at the end of the day, we chose the third-party solution because that was a better fit for us and a better value.
Mr. Kolis, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Mike, a couple of questions here. I don't know who else was with me back when we bought the SAP back in 2014, but it was about $10 million if I remember correctly. Now, don't we have some kind of something in the budget in the future are we going to replace SAP, or is there some kind of major software upgrade that we need to make? I think it's another. Yeah. When is that happening?
So I was going to mention that at the end. So you're about.
Oh, okay. Well, let's wait then. If you got it on there.
I definitely will touch on that, Mr. Kobles.
And then the other question is about the project management software that was supposed to come with SAP, which we didn't use. Did we ever get another project management software with that program?
So we do use the project management software with SAP, although probably not to the full. We don't use it to the full extent that I think you're asking about. But it does track all of our land development projects and our capital projects, mostly from a funding perspective. Our land development projects, it tracks soup to nuts, all of the tasks, fees, inspections, etc. We also did implement a separate construction project management solution called Procore. And maybe to further that, there's also a separate initiative internally, Mr. Kobles, we're working on our our project support office, developing those capabilities around project management, and there will likely be some software implementation that comes along with that.
Yeah, Procore is a good software. I was just curious if what we did with the SAP module. Okay, thanks.
Yep. So from an operations technologies, SCADA technology perspective, obviously there's a number of benefits that come along with that. It has significantly reduced our site visits to our remote facilities because those facilities are now more automated than ever. We have more visibility into those facilities, and it's certainly reduced our response time when getting out to those facilities and addressing problems, whether those are operational issues or equipment failures or what have you. We also operate 2 highly complex treatment plants, Broad Run and Trap Rock, with minimal staff. There's really only a couple of operators typically on duty at those locations because those plants are so highly automated. If you've ever been in the control room for either one of those facilities, you know, they're, again, big screens that are laid out, and just about everything in those plants can be controlled from that central location. Our operations technology also provides high quality data to multiple other solutions, and eventually it will feed our corporate business intelligence solution, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And it's just one other example of where we've negotiated some cost savings in security technologies for a return on investment. We use a pretty sophisticated technology in our operations technology environment for cybersecurity, and the vendor was significantly increasing their prices. And we were either going to have to drop it or negotiate a significant discount. Fortunately, we were able to negotiate that discount and continue to use the solution. Great solution for us, but again, it was a value discussion. Do we need the Cadillac, or can we go with something else or get it for a lower price? Finally, I'd like to mention a little bit about our approach to energy management. And I think this was a question that Mr. Koblos had actually. So we have a couple of different ways in which operations technology in particular facilitates energy management. There's over 100 data points that are being collected at Broad Run, and also this power management and monitoring that's being done at Trap Rock. So we do have those capabilities today. We're not yet extensively using our operations technology data feeds to modify our behaviors in terms of power management, but that's something that we're planning for. And actually, I understand we're going to be making some moves in that direction as part of the Broad Run Phase 3 expansion. I'm sorry, Phase 2 expansion.
Mike, Mr. Moody has a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, hi, Mike. You mentioned using SCADA to automate on the operations technology side. Just curious, has your team explored for the leading edge products the use of robotics process automation or any AI tools for automating on the technology side?
So we've explored some robotic process automation type solutions more on the IT side. It would be things so one example would be invoice processing, where we would do our RPA type functions. We have not adopted any solutions like that yet. We actually think this might be the year that we would, but it has to make sense for us. This kind of goes back to the return on investment. Do we have the volume of transactions that would justify an investment for RPA? We're not sure yet, but we are monitoring developments in that space, and it would likely be a Microsoft technology or an SAP technology because that's kind of our foundation.
Okay,
you had
so
another part. Go ahead.
So
I'm sorry.
basically, what you're saying would probably be a Power Automate if you went to the RPA of the Microsoft side.
Correct. That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And SAP has some parallel products and also
Yes.
party products that are quite similar.
Okay.
You asked about artificial intelligence and machine learning. I was going to touch on that later.
Okay,
so
great.
For the Broad Run Phase 3 expansion, we are now looking at how we're going to incorporate machine learning. We think that's actually going to be a critical technology to help us operate the Broad Run plant to meet the stringent permit limits that we know we're going to have at the Phase 3 expansion. So machine learning is very much part of our strategy for operations in the future. And then we're looking at artificial intelligence and machine learning in general for other functional areas, but don't have specific projects where we're going to implement yet.
All right, thank you.
So to continue with the energy management, there's some other ways in which we are also where we see energy management savings. If you think about, for example, the mobile work order management solution, it actually saves energy from the perspective that our our field staff isn't driving back and forth to the office. They're saving gas, and they're saving time by not having to to make all those trips back and forth with paper. And there's another number of other benefits along those same lines with the different mobile technologies that we have in place. I'd also like to point out that our mobile work from home strategy, albeit driven by the pandemic, allowed us to realize a cost savings in 2020 and 2021 for the DCH administrative building. We actually saw about a $30,000 cost reduction in our energy costs both years because our folks were not occupying the building. So we've seen some savings there. Okay, so I wanted to leave the board and committee members with a sense of the major business processes that are supported by. So let me just get this slides right here. Okay. Sorry. So I wanted to give you a sense of the major core business processes and programs that are supported by all of these technologies. So there's an application to connection end-to-end business process, and some of these are hundreds of steps that have been mapped out in SAP and that cross over into other technologies. So just to give you a sense, these are master high-level business processes that incorporate multiple business functions throughout Loudoun Water. So application to connection is essentially our engineering process. It's everything from the application for a utility extension by a developer to plan reviews, fees, inspections, to final payment of connection fees. It includes that entire process all the way to the point where the meter is about to be set. So that's an end-to-end process, mostly in SAP, but it incorporates some other technologies as well. Then we have a master high-level meter to cash process, which is, again, it's setting the meter, it's setting up the account for the customer, it's billing the customer, accepting their payment, account management, move in, move out, addressing customer issues. It's that customer care master process, which is meter to cash. So again, most of that is in SAP, but it touches multiple other systems as well. Then we have our procure to pay process, which is our process for acquiring goods and services, setting up contracts, invoicing, payments, and so forth. Then there's acquire to retire, which is the high-level process for acquiring new assets, putting them into service, operating them and maintaining them, and eventually retiring them from service. So those could be physical assets in the field. Then there's the hire to retire for employees, and that's the end-to-end process for employees, right? It's the decision to hire, advertising, the hiring process, onboarding, benefits, payroll, and all the way through employee separation. Then there's another master process for compliance, which is the process for collecting data that feeds in, and it's laboratory sampling and also data from our daily operations in our plants that feed into our reporting to our regulators. And so that's the compliance master process. And then finally, there's a set of processes that support treatment, distribution, collection with this water and wastewater treatment, distribution of water, collection in our wastewater system. And those high-level processes are all supported by the operations technology stack. Okay, so I've mentioned before that SAP and Microsoft are really our technology pillars, and hopefully this gives you a sense of kind of the scope of what each of these encompasses. So from a finance standpoint, let me see here. You've got SAP includes finance, which is your general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and then it's all of these other things: procurement, inventory, HR, payroll, customer service, billing. Our call center is actually an SAP technology, project management, which I mentioned earlier, assets and work orders, IT service management. All of these are done in SAP. In many organizations, these are all separate systems that have to be independently maintained and integrated. We do it all in one system. That comes with its pros and cons, of course, but for the most part, the fact that it is all integrated is a huge advantage for Loudoun Water. Now, we do add on different systems around it, to add new capabilities and extend the capabilities of SAP, but this is really at the core of our business processes and our computing enterprise, if you will. We also use Microsoft technology extensively, as many organizations do. We use it both on-premise, so laptops and servers and so forth, but we also use Microsoft's cloud extensively. We use it for database technology, for servers, for email. We use Microsoft Teams, of course, which we're using today, and then we use Microsoft Office 365 for desktop automation. So we are heavily dependent on the Microsoft technology stack as well. Okay, so this is where a lot of this starts to come together, and you see the history of how things have happened. So this is the business technology investments timeline. I like to think of it as the timeline of awesomeness. And it starts back in approximately 2007, where we really began kind of our modernization process from some older legacy technologies. So it began with a modernization of our GIS system, which is our mapping system. We moved to a much updated platform at that time and really started to make use of it across the enterprise. We also modernized our data center, moved to later data center technologies at the time. And then in 2008, we implemented a records management system. We modernized our network and introduced network segmentation and some other foundational technologies at the time. We adopted a laboratory information management system back in 2010, and we've upgraded all of these systems since then. So it's not like they were implemented and then they're stale. They continue to be sustained. Of course, many of you are probably familiar with our implementation of our advanced metering infrastructure system and the meter data management system that came along with it. That was back in 2013, and we're going through an upgrade of that now, which you approved early last year. And then we implemented SAP back in 2014. So that was an enormous event for us. Many of you participated in that, and that was a challenging project, of course. But what it has allowed is it has provided a jumping off point for all of these other capabilities and technologies that have come after. So many of these technologies integrate back with SAP, and they're founded on SAP as the core technology. So a couple of, just to sprinkle in a few more, what's happened since then. In 2015, we launched our customer portal, which is LW Connect, which is, again, is still in use today. We have great subscriber sign up for that. We relaunched our website back in 2016. We moved to a cloud architecture, so we started moving many of our computing services from on-premise to the cloud back in 2016. We also formally launched or relaunched our security program in 2016. We implemented a mobile work order solution back in 2017. We also launched a water information management solution in 2017, and that ties together data from some other sources to help us report to regulators. And we also adopted Microsoft Office 365, which many of you are probably familiar with in your enterprise as well. We moved SAP to the cloud in 2008. We launched a mobile warehouse app in the same time frame. We adopted Procore, which we were talking about a few minutes ago. That's a construction project management solution. That was back in 2019. We also launched a sewer closed circuit TV for sewer inspections solution back in 2019. And then in 2020, we launched our business intelligence solution. And that really is a culmination of many of these other solutions. It takes advantage of the data from multiple other solutions and allows us to see business insights, to see trends, and to see things more quickly in a new way that we were not able to see before. We also launched a new utility protection solution back then, and then we're working on a next generation communications strategy, and this is both wired and unwired or wireless services to our remote facilities to increase our connectivity and our ability to automate functions at our remote facilities. So that's next generation communications. And we're continuing to work on that. Okay, so I've mentioned how SAP is at the core, and these are all those different functions I mentioned previously. These are all the different solutions that integrate with SAP, and I'll just mention a few. I won't belabor all of this. So SAP integrates with GIS, and in fact, GIS is the repository or the system of record for our physical assets in the field, and it exchanges that information with SAP, so they're synchronized. And of course, our AMI solution exchanges meter read information with SAP, so that's what's used to bill our customers. Our mobile application exchanges work orders and assets with SAP, so it draws work orders from SAP, presents those on the mobile application to our workers in the field. And then LW Connect for account information, mobile warehouse for inventory, business intelligence, which kind of ties everything together and pulls a great deal of data from SAP as well. All right. So this next slide, I was planning to show you a demonstration of GIS. I tested it multiple times in the last couple of days, and it works on everybody else's computer this morning, except for mine. So my apologies. I'm going to skip this. If we have a minute or two at the end, I'll try it again. But instead, I'm going to continue to go through this. I do have a demonstration later on where I'm going to show you business intelligence, and I think that'll be interesting for you. So
Mr. Campbell has a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hey, Mike, just real quick. Is this Esri that we're using for our GIS, or do we have something else?
No, it is Esri. We're an ESRI shop as well. For those of you that are not familiar, ESRI is the 800-pound gorilla in the spatial mapping space, in the spatial software mapping space. The county uses them, just about every county and state and local government, and the federal government uses ESRI, and we do as well.
Cool, thanks.
Yep. So this is the second slide of the timeline of Awesomeness, and this shows our transition over time for our operations technology environment. So we launched our SCADA system back in 2003, and at that time it covered just 7 sites. And you can see over time it's grown. It was 23 sites in 2006, and again, these are our remote facilities. So they're tanks, they're pump stations, they're meter vaults, that sort of thing. And so we've connected those facilities over time, which allows us to automate those facilities and see what's happening at them without necessarily having to have someone visit those locations every time a change needs to be made or a reading needs to be taken. So we took a big leap forward in 2008 when Broad Run was commissioned. Of course, that's a highly automated plant. It makes heavy use of operations technology. We also launched a security system for the Loudoun Water campus. So that's a badge reading and video surveillance system back in 2008. It was fairly simplistic at the time. We've upgraded it since then. The Goose Creek retrofit was in 2014, so that was a significant leap forward for that plant from an operations technology perspective. Then we launched our instrument calibration program back in 2015, and this is a really important program for us because it formalizes our calibration of all of our sensors in the field, which drives data quality, and it drives our confidence in the data that's being collected so that we have confidence in what we're seeing and what we're making decisions about from an operations perspective. And also we have confidence in the data that we're reporting to regulators. In 2016, we had the Biosolids Upgrade, again, kind of a big leap forward for operations technology. And in 2017, we hit a milestone of 104 sites that were being serviced by our SCADA OT environment. We also formally launched the cyber program for the operations technology environment, which has led to multiple significant improvements from a cybersecurity standpoint over the last several years. We've really taken some big steps forward for OT. We also upgraded the campus security system in 2017, and then Trap Rock was commissioned in 2018. Again, another highly automated plant. I should mention that Broad Run and Trap Rock use the same foundational operations technology application software and many of the same control systems, PLCs and that sort of thing. So there is some commonalities, but of course the treatment processes are very different. We implemented a secure remote access, which is, that's a huge leap forward for us from our ability to actually operate our operations technology, our SCADA environment remotely. We also added in a building automation component. So there's actually a huge building automation component, HVAC and that sort of thing for Broad Run. It's a completely separate network and it has very significant capabilities, hundreds of sensors and so forth. And then finally, we implemented a cybersecurity OT monitoring system, and we've now finished upgrading the security system at all of our water facilities in 2021. So the timeline continues. There's lots of things that are planned for the future, but these are the major events from an operations technology perspective. So I wanted to leave you with just a little bit of a sense of what the different layers of functionality are for operations technology. Hopefully this helps you to sort of break it down in your head, what the different layers are, how they kind of fit together. So we call layer 0 the sensor layer. That's really the physical sensor, instrument, control device. It's the thing that's directly attached to the pipe or the pump or the valve. It's the physical device. And then layer 1 is I like to think of these as little brains that are deployed in the field that directly control these physical devices. So these are PLCs or programmable logic controllers, and they're physical devices that are co-located with the sensors and then actually provide direct control of those sensors. And in most cases, these can operate independently for some time period without the layers above them. And then above them is the communications infrastructure, the network that connects all these devices together and presents them to layer 3, which is the SCADA hardware, which is the network, the servers, the storage, and the applications, the software applications that operators actually use to control those devices and control the plant. So it's the operator interface, it's all the analytical data and reporting, it's all the alarms and events when something happens, an exceedance limit is tripped at the plant. That's what gets presented as an event to an operator, and they take some action. And this is what some of those software screens look like for our operators at Trap Rock. And then layered on top of that is all the management policies, security policies, and then all of the cybersecurity defenses are at layer 5. So there are over 12,000 endpoints that are managed through the OT environment. To give you a sense of the scale, there's over 120 sites that are now in service. There's 365 PLCs that are controlled through the operations technology.
What happened?
I'll check.
Next couple, was there a question?
Yeah, this is Jim. I have a question.
Yes.
Back on that last slide, you showed that wonderful picture of your operations center. Was that in fact where the water intrusion, when the manhole cover was left off and the broad run raised and started filling our tanks? Was that where it was first noticed on those screens?
Was that where the intrusion for?
Well, we had an intrusion of excess water out of the Broad Run Creek in a manhole cover that a construction detail had left off, and it filled. And I was wondering if that's where the alarm was set off, that the tank was filling unusually fast.
So that would have been in the this is Trap Rock, but that would have been in the Broad Run Control Center, but it would be very similar. There's an operator that's eyes on to those screens all the time, and that is almost certainly where it was first observed. Yes.
Yeah, that's. I think it's really important to realize that we have that kind of visibility in that time. So thank you for showing us that.
Yep. This is deliberately fuzzed out so that you can't see any details. But if you were in the control room and looking at these, you can see tank levels going up and down, and again live reads on tank levels, flow rates, chemical feeds. Everything is right there at their fingertips. The next couple slides are an attempt to present to you how all of these technologies come together to support a particular program or a process. And we start here with asset management because it's been discussed with this committee previously. So we kind of work our way up from bottom and then the next level up. So the GIS or mapping system provides spatial information. SAP provides asset information. So it's the repository for all of our hydrants, our pipes, our valves, etc., and the condition of those valves and when the last work order was executed and so forth. That's where all of that is stored. Our mobile field application is how our users access it. That's how they actually access work orders and assets and then make updates. And then the sewer CCTV system allows us to inspect sewer pipes. All of these feed data into our business intelligence solution, and ultimately that supports our asset management program. And there's other technologies, there's some poetic license here, but you can see how all of these things come together to provide support to our asset management program. And I'll show you some business intelligence screens in a few minutes so you can see how some of that works. Meter to cash is similar. So we have LW Connect, our customer portal, and that provides customer self-service. It allows them to make payments, see account information, and so forth. Then we have SAP, which is our customer information system, or CRM system, if you're familiar with that term. It's also our finance system, and that provides that customer relationship management functionality, that end-to-end customer experience. Then we actually use an SAP telephony technology for our call center. We actually can use Microsoft Teams as a backup, so we're very fortunate to have some failover capabilities here for our call center. And then our AMI system provides hourly meter reads. It provides the quarterly billing read as well. So we can use hourly meter reads, of course, to determine consumption patterns, determine where there are leaks, notify our customers, and so forth. And we do those things. But it also provides the billing reads. And all of that supports the meter to cash customer end-to-end process. Compliance management, similar example. We have a laboratory information management system for laboratory sampling and reporting, a water information management system, which ties together data actually from the LIMS system and the SCADA system and helps us perform that regulatory reporting. And then we have the OT SCADA applications and all the instruments and sensors, which feed operations data, provide reports, and so forth. And all of that supports our compliance management activities for both water and wastewater. Right? We have regulatory requirements on both sides. Okay,
Hey,
yes.
Back to the hourly meter reads in the AMI. I think during the rate increase hearings that we had, I thought someone asked if we could provide more real-time kind of hot meter reads for the public sector. Yeah. I don't know whether utilities want to do that or not. It's something I would love to see. Yeah. Like, you know, how much water I use today and how much water I use tomorrow. So I'm kind of a little bit off topic, but that triggered something when I saw the AMI meter read. So is it something that we're ever considering doing? We have so much information. Maybe we could share it with customers and
good question.
Make them savvier.
Yeah, we've had some discussions over the years. We had initially leaned away from it because it creates challenges. You present that granular data to customers. Sometimes it creates questions. Sometimes the data isn't always complete. It takes time for the data to populate. So there are some challenges there. We have seen a trend in the industry towards exposing more and more of that hourly data. And so we're moving in that direction as well. I believe we're planning later this year to implement. So right now you can go in and you can see, you see your billing, you see your billing reads. We're planning to implement to the point where you can see, I think daily, perhaps hourly. And so we're planning to move in that direction. And that would be available through LW Connect. I was actually going to touch on that as one of the things that we're planning for the future. One of my last slides.
Thanks.
Good question. Okay, so we're getting close to the end here. Work from anywhere is one of the strategies I mentioned previously, and there's many things that make up this capability. And I want to kind of step back here and sort of describe how important this was, obviously, during the pandemic. As you're probably aware, many businesses and many of our peers, they were not prepared for an event like the pandemic. They scrambled, and I talked to my peers about this sort of thing. They scrambled to deploy laptops, deploy secure connections. That's really what a lot of this hinged on. Roll out Zoom or Teams or whatever the solution was. And at Loudoun Water, we didn't do any of that. Essentially, we decided on Friday, I looked it up, it was Friday, March 13th, back in 2020. We said we're going to go send everybody home and have a telework test day. And we've been working from home in this manner pretty much ever since. We made essentially no changes to our infrastructure. We purchased no additional laptops. We didn't buy any additional software. Everything was already in place to support this. In large part because of some of the decisions we had made previously for our mobile work order management program. We already had folks in the field with laptops for our using our mobile work order management system. And so they were already prepared to sign in the morning and use SAP and do work orders and access their email and so forth. Everything was already set up for them. And you see, so a couple of things just to point that out. We already had the policies in place to support a digital paperless environment. We are largely paperless as an organization. There's still a few legacy things here and there, but really we have the full end-to-end technology to support paperless across the enterprise. We have a number of cloud solutions which have really helped us with all of this. So Microsoft Office 365, of course, and Teams was really important during the pandemic and continues to be. We have all of our as-built, and we've had them for probably over, 12 plus years. We've had all of our as-built scanned and available electronically. We have a solution for electronic plan review, which was really important during the pandemic. Obviously, we needed to be able to do things instead of on paper. We needed to be able to do them electronically. We did adopt DocuSign. This was one of the gaps that we had to fill. So instead of signing things on paper, we needed an electronic signature solution. And so we quickly deployed DocuSign at the beginning of the pandemic. And that was really the only application change that we made. We did deploy a procurement portal. That was something we had planned anyway, and it certainly has helped things, but it wasn't a requirement to get through the pandemic.
Mike, Mr. Koblis has a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Mike, as Carla can attest, this is very passionate for me on this part as far as reducing paper. Are we, two questions. First question, are we demanding that all projects come in electronically?
So my understanding is that we require everything to come in electronically. Yes. I would ask the
plans.
Yeah.
Everything, all permit plans, everything, because I know that there are a lot of jurisdictions that are doing that now.
Yeah. My understanding is that we are. If there's anybody on the engineering team that wants to chime in and say that's not true, but that is my understanding. That and we have, I believe, for years. I know we have a specification for it that requires electronic and paper, and I think we've transitioned to fully electronic.
Okay, great. The second question is, are we encouraging all staff to use, what's the word I want? Anyway, basically all material that they look at, like not have any books or anything, but encourage everybody to review catalogs online, not have all kinds of catalog, because it just saves tremendous amount of space. Hello?
Yeah, sorry, I had a bit of a blip there. But I think you were asking, do we require everyone to do everything paperless, to drive towards paperless as much as possible? I think that was your question.
Yeah, just not have catalogs on the desk and not use engineering books. You know, all this stuff is online now. It saves space.
Yeah, so generally speaking, that's driven by individual departments, but I can tell you from most of my peers, the different leaders across the organization, there's generally pretty good adoption of paperless and a drive towards paperless. Honestly, there are some holdouts, of course, as you might find in any organization, but we've definitely pushed in that direction pretty hard.
So have you, do all the people have at least 2 screens on their desk, including their laptop? Or are we still a one screen? Okay.
Yeah, our standard is 2 screens. Yeah, we offer 2 screens plus a laptop.
Perfect. Thank you.
So just a couple notes about how all of this was made possible. We have a great, we have a highly secure network and a next generation VPN solution that really enabled a lot of this. Of course, we stopped buying desktop computers years ago. We've only purchased laptops, and I like to use the phrase that I'd rather be lucky than good any day. And this was one of those examples, perhaps. We saw this trend towards users wanting laptops instead of desktops, and we made that decision. And it proved to be really fortuitous in setting us up for the pandemic response. We also have redundant internet circuits, so our users can connect properly. And a great cloud architecture that made all this possible, which again kind of comes together in this mobile network infrastructure and supports our overall work from anywhere capability. So again, this transition was really pretty seamless for us. The biggest things we had to do was adopt DocuSign And we did have to train our users in teams. Of course, not everybody was fully familiar with that, but those were really kind of minimal changes. This was a fairly painless transition for Loudoun Water, unlike many of our peers. Okay, so I'd like to spend a minute or two talking about what's coming for the future. What do we see short, medium, and long term? And also I'd like to talk about the phrase digital transformation. So I'll share at the outset that digital transformation is the adoption of cloud solutions, mobile solutions, harvesting value out of those types of investments to really automate your enterprise and move towards paperless processes. I'm not a fan of the phrase digital transformation. I sort of think of digital transformation as doing my day job, and it's the day job of the technology team members at Loudoun Water. This is what we've been working on for the past 10, 15 years. And for us, it is largely complete, although you're never really done, of course. But all the major things that typically come under the framework of digital transformation are largely accomplished here at Loudoun Water. We will be continuing to improve and upgrade our existing systems. We're really, though, focused on harvesting value out of what we've already put in place. We'll be increasing some automation in some areas, moving some more things to the cloud, but by and large, again, a lot of this is done. So that being said, the short, medium, and long-term activities for us kind of look like this. And you'll see some of these as CIP investments as well, just to be clear. So we will be deploying some additional mobile applications. These are building on the existing framework we have, things like valve exercising, meter crock inspection, there's a few others, easement mowing. So those are specific point solutions for specific processes. We'll also be facilitating customer interaction, and that's actually to the question that was asked earlier about providing more granular data to our customers about their meter, their water usage and their consumption patterns. That is something we're planning to work on this year, and that's part of our investment plan. We're also continuing to invest in business intelligence. Frankly, again, this is all enabled by all of these other technology investments we've made over the years. And so all of this kind of comes together and provides some really advanced capabilities. And I'll show you some of it in a few minutes. And then we're continuing to work on our next generation's communications and network architecture. And again, this is mostly focused on our ability to connect with our remote facilities. So it's wired services and then wireless as a backup for the most part, to really improve our automation and visibility at those remote facilities. Now, in the medium term, and I've taken some poetic license here because these OT upgrades, replacements, and expansion are both short, medium, and long term. So we're really getting to the point with some of our field sensors and OT systems and so forth, where they're getting to end of life. And so we're on that upgrade cycle, just as we are with many of our pipes and pumps and valves in the field, right? Those things have to be replaced. Well, so does the OT infrastructure. And so that's on the upgrade path, and we'll be working on that over time, and also accommodating the expansion, for example, of Broad Run and also Trap Rock. And then we're continuing to work on cybersecurity improvements as well. Just to give you a sort of flavor of that, there's a number of different technical areas. One of the things we want to work on this year is improving or work on is our response planning. So we have an incident response plan, but we want to exercise it fully. We want to make sure that we've gone through all the steps. We know who we need to call, when we need to call them. We know we have all of our golden images ready. We have all of our backup procedures. We've tested our backups and those types of things. So I'm sure that's near and dear. For example, in Ms. Sursakar, you're probably familiar with incident response planning. Those are the types of things we want to do a little bit more formal.
Yeah. The incident response plan, is that, I'm sure you're updating that on an annual basis, right? That's what you said.
We look at it yes, we do look at it every year. But this is a year where we're gonna do a little bit of a deeper dive and update it again.
So why didn't we do a deeper dive before?
So it's kind of a rolling process. Last year we did, let's see, this was back at the end of 2020. We did a full Nist assessment driven by the American Water Infrastructure Act. Yeah. And so that assessment spawned off a number of other activities. And so we've been focused on working on some of those other activities, which were in some cases more around governance or improving our onboarding and offboarding procedures, account management procedures, and that sort of thing. So some of it's capacity and choosing what to focus on. It's not as though we ignore our incident response plan. For example, we actually did have an opportunity to exercise our incident response plan last year. So we know that we know most of the procedures, but this is a year where, okay, we're going to do a full tabletop. We did an internal tabletop.
Okay.
This year we'll do a full tabletop with a third party, right? Have somebody
Okay.
write the exercise for us and really do a little bit more rigor. And so it's just, you know, that's a business decision. Does it make sense to do that full tabletop or kind of a stripped down version? This year is the full version.
Okay. The other thing is very quickly, this is important. That's all. I apologize if I'm taking time here, but you mentioned Nist, right? So Nist has gone from Rev 4 to Rev 5, right? You might be aware of that. If you're not, I'm bringing that to your attention. With that being said, what are the plans? I hope there's a plan in place that we move to Rev 5 when we look at incident response plan and cybersecurity improvements as a whole.
Yeah, so we definitely would. I'm actually not familiar with all the changes in Rev 5 versus Rev 4, so that's something we'll have to dig into. But I would expect we would do that as part of this incident response planning exercise that we're planning to conduct. And then we do full cybersecurity assessments, even outside of the AWEA framework that I mentioned previously. I believe we have one planned for next year, and so we would capture some of those changes then as well.
When are we planning to do the upgrade of the incident response plan? Sorry, not an upgrade, but a review and an update.
Probably done by the third quarter of this year. We haven't set a firm date for it yet.
Okay, I would really like to take a look at that, and also I would strongly recommend, and I will be talking about that. I'll make a keynote that we talk about and we upgrade to Rev 5, where not everything to Rev 5, but there are certain key areas for Rev 5 that are important for cybersecurity improvement in terms of, you know, utility infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll dig into that myself. Appreciate it.
It's key. It's important. I'm well subject matter expert in that, and being on the board, I think I'm just doing my due diligence to bringing that to the board.
Thank you. Good comments. I appreciate it.
And then,
No
Mike,
problem.
just to dovetail off of what Angeline mentioned, I know there's ARPA funds available specifically for utilities for cybersecurity upgrades. So I know that money expires at the end of 2024. Are we taking advantage of that? Maybe we could get, I'm not a big person that likes to leech off the government, but if we could get a freebie and upgrade some of our cybersecurity systems through ARPA funds, I think that would be great. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah,
thank you. We'll look into that. Yeah, I'm not sure if we're eligible, but that's something we can definitely look at.
Yeah, Mr. Allen, any ARPA funds would have to come through the county. They're actually the warehouse and the flow through for that. So we would have to go through them to request any of that. So, and I believe they've gotten their share and have allocated it, but we can follow up with them on that as well.
Yeah, when we were online, I was just reading right now about it, and it seems like they are available specifically for what we're talking about, whether or not we have to go through the county or not.
Right. Yes, it is a category of eligibility for sure.
Okay. All right.
I would just say, when it comes to cybersecurity investments, I know many of our peers would need to make investments in specific technologies just to get up to par. That's not the case with Loudoun Water. It would be more about improving our programmatic policies, procedures, incident response planning, which I've already mentioned. Going through exercises for preparedness. Those are the areas that we would invest more, and then perhaps in staff or third-party contractors to help us run things from a security operations perspective. Not so much investments in new technology, which is it's probably a little bit easier to spend. But anyway, we're pretty mature from a technology perspective when it comes to cybersecurity. Hope that helps.
Very quickly here, one more thing. Sorry. When we are reviewing and updating, our incident response plan, are we also simultaneously reviewing and updating our incident response procedure?
Yes.
Okay, okay, all right. And would we be able to get a copy of that and see that in the future?
Yes, I
As a
would
board?
propose, yeah, let us update it before we
course.
provide it, but we will definitely, I mean, certainly we can provide that.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you. And
Yes.
by the way, great presentation thus far.
Thank you. Okay, just a couple more things to wrap this up. So I mentioned the cybersecurity improvements. Over the long term, Mr. Koblis, you asked this earlier, we are planning for a major upgrade for SAP. So unfortunately, or fortunately perhaps, SAP is going to impose an upgrade on all of their customers sometime between now and 2030. So they've set a hard deadline for 2030, but they're doing other things to incentivize the push for customers. And so we're planning a road mapping effort this year, which will help frame out how we're going to make the transition to this next generation SAP technology. There are a couple of other things in play. It's not just the drop dead date. There's some other upgrades that we're going to have to do anyway before 2030. So that might tip our hand a little bit and cause us to do it a little bit sooner. But as I mentioned previously, this is a return on investment calculation. We're trying to determine where are we going to get the most value? How long should we run what we have versus make certain types of transitional upgrades between now and 2030 that will let us run, what we have longer, and also perhaps minimize the pain of that transition, because it is a big upgrade. It won't be on the same scale as the original SAP implementation, and there's a lot of ways to automate this, but it is a major investment. I think somewhere to the tune of $5 to $7 million in the CIP. Although that will be fine-tuned this year as a result of this road mapping effort. Hopefully we'll have some better cost estimates, but we'll have to see how that shakes out. So that is what's planned for SAP. And that will touch everything that touches SAP, right? Because all of these things touch the SAP of today. So if we upgrade SAP, we've got to make sure that all of that existing integration still works in the future. And then the last point there is that we're continuing to evaluate things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is a flavor of artificial intelligence. I mentioned how machine learning will be used for the broad run phase 3 expansion. I expect to see artificial intelligence and machine learning, just my take on the industry. The vendors that we have will introduce some of those capabilities in our existing solutions, and we'll be able to take advantage of them. I don't see Loudoun Water necessarily going out and buying AI or machine learning technology on its own for its own sake, but rather as something that's integrated into something that we already have. So that's generally the trend that I see from a technology perspective. So that's kind of what the roadmap looks like. Again, intended to be a high level, but I hope that gives you a sense of where we're headed. Right, my intention here was to provide a quick demonstration of some of our business intelligence dashboards. And so I'll just show you a couple of those now. So, of course, you're familiar with the Erc Connections Reports that we provide to the board, and you ask about them every month. How many connections did we get this month? Well, we're actually able to see in near real time. All of this data is updated as of last night, and so we can actually see thus far in 2022 that we have 32 ERCs in the month of January, and you can see 18.5 of them are from data centers. You can see that from the pie chart over here. So again, this we can see very quickly, and all of our staff has available access to this information. We can see what's happening from an ERC perspective very quickly, and we can look back in time as well. I think it's instructive actually to let's look back at, this might have timed out on me because I was paused on it for so long. Okay, let's look back at 2021, and you can see the board had probably seen reports on all of these through November. And of course, most of this was trending along the same lines. We've seen a lot of data center connections over the last year, about 50%. We saw this big jump up in December. I'm not sure if the board is aware of this or not yet, But we saw this big spike in new ERCs in December, likely driven, of course, by the rate increases that went into effect in January. We often see a spike in new connections. They're trying to get in kind of under the wire there. And so we saw this.
Mike, I'm not seeing any of what you're talking about. I'm just seeing the one slide. I don't know if I'm just the only one. It could be.
Anybody else see it?
We see a demonstration business intelligence.
It's just your static slide, Mike.
Yeah.
There you go. I think that's it now.
Yeah, that looks like it now.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry about that.
Big jump through December.
Yes, big jump in December. Again, you can see throughout the entire year, half of them were data centers, but then in December, as I mentioned, we saw this large spike, over 1,000 ERCs that month. So that's a pretty big jump. And we have this historical data for other years as well, so you can see how the patterns have changed over time. So very useful for us to analyze what those patterns and trends are. And there's other ways to look at this. And you can actually drill in and see specific projects. I won't do that here. I'm certainly not the expert on individual projects, but it provides that level of information at the fingertips of our engineers and our leaders and managers. All right, the next one I'm going to show you is a facility assessment report. So this is the data that we collect in the field for our facilities. We assess their condition, what the value of those assets are, and then essentially estimate what their remaining useful life is. And so that's what we're showing you here for one particular location, the Concora Sewer Transmission System. So this is a small set of assets, and you can see the kind of the chart of assets here, the quantity of equipment, so it's not a large number. These are not large numbers, about 30 assets. And you can see most of them are in excellent shape. So you see the remaining useful life over here. Most of them are excellent, some are good, some are fair, and at least one of them is past its useful life. And then if we wanted to, we could drill down and look at all the individual assets that make up the Concora Sewer Transmission System and determine which ones are due for repair and what the issues are. I'm going to show you one other view here. Let's see if this loads. This is a chart of all assets showing criticality and likelihood of failure and consequence of failure. So this is a common way to chart out what assets are critical and therefore should be addressed first. And so you can see on this, it's actually these two assets here are charting as the two highest assets that need to be addressed for replacement. And again, this is all assets across all facilities, so I'm not going to drill into individual ones, but it gives you a nice sense of, okay, here are some areas to watch, and then here's the real problem areas, the ones that we need to address immediately. If they're not in the CIP for replacement, let's make sure they're part of our plan. Okay, so that's one of, yes.
That's not the Beacon Hill well, is it?
I don't know which one it is.
Just kidding.
Okay, and then this last one that I'd like to show you is the rehabilitation and replacement cost plan for Broad Run. So this is a roll-up of everything at Broad Run, and it's showing you the time frames at which we're going to allocate funds for replacement, and then how that rolls up to different assets. So in the 2021 to 26 timeframe, we don't have anything that's tagged as due for replacement. I'm sure there's some minor items. But by and large, the major capital assets are not due for replacement over the next 5 years. But then the 10 years that follow that, we do have a large number of assets that are categorized as due for replacement. So those are the ones that are kind of in this orange color. And you can see that we have a spike in assets that are due for replacement in 2029. So we really need to start planning for those. And then we have another spike out here in the next 10-year time frame in 2038, where those are due for replacement. And it charts even further out, all the way out to 2060, even close to 2070. And you can see what objects they are. So most of them are pumps, submersible pumps, centrifugal pumps, likely pumps in the wet well for Broad Run. So hopefully that gives you a sense of how we're using some of our business intelligence capabilities. We have a number of other reports that are used by our engineers, but also by our business leaders to track financial cost, expenses, revenue, et cetera. So there's lots of different useful reports that we're building in our BI environment, and we're intending to bring in data from multiple sources, including SCADA, over time to make it even more useful to our internal team members.
Mike, Mr. Campbell has a question.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Hey, Mike. So I know with like our sewer lines, they have a life expectancy, generally speaking, of like 100 years, right? Isn't that? I think I'm remembering that correctly, something like that. And same with like our water lines, you know, the ductile iron pipe. I think that's like roughly 100-year life expectancy. When we're looking at, say, like ductile iron pipe, do we have a similar screen like this where we can go, okay, we're looking at, instead of like 2070, we're going, okay, maybe it's, you know, 80 years, 90 years from now that we have to replace the things or something like that? Or do we just, 50 years is a long time from now too, so I get that, but is it just stop at 50, or do we look even past that?
This might be a good question for Jessica. Before I turn it over to her, I did want to mention one of the screens I wanted to show you here. And again, this was working yesterday, so I'm a little surprised. I think I have a local issue on my machine. But at any rate, if you look back in time, what this is showing you is the age of our water mains and then the material that makes up our water mains by mileage. So all of our older pipes are essentially water mains are all cast iron. And then you see we made this transition right around 1980 to ductile iron. And you see, so there's obviously a lot more mileage. We hit a spike of 2005. We put in 82 miles of ductile iron, and that's what we've continued to install ever since then. And so we can chart this against the likelihood of failure, consequence of failure, the life expectancy for these assets, to answer your question. So yes, we can chart that out. I did want to point out one of the maps here, which again, wish I could show it, and I could send you a screenshot. But what it shows is the coincidence of water main breaks against pipe type. So all of the blue pipes are ductile iron. Relatively speaking, we have few main breaks in those locations. But where ductile iron is, where cast iron is installed, which is typically Sterling Park and Sugarland Run area, those are cast iron, and most of our water main breaks are in those areas. Not just because they're older pipes, but also because cast iron is brittle. And so you see that it's a really great spatial representation of this is where those older pipes are of this type, and this is where all the breaks are. So Jessica, do you want to add anything? I think Jessica Dazar is on. If you want to add anything in response to Brent's question.
Sure, Mike, I think you did a great job of explaining it. For what you're seeing here with the water main statistics, we have similar dashboards for sewer and for reclaimed as well. So we can see basically what's the, when were the installation dates, so that we can kind of look at the age of the pipes that we have and the different types of material. What you can't see there on the map is also showing the diameter as well, so you can see that spatially in the main break history. But we have another map as well that kind of turns it around from a different perspective and shows us, okay, what do we think we're going to have to replace in the next 10 years? So it takes the calculations of what pipe material was installed, and different pipe materials have different expected useful lives, so that we can get a better visual representation of what we think is going to be coming next. So we can use that data with main break history to come up with our next pipe replacement projects. But we use GIS very heavily for making decisions on any linear replacement type projects, if that helps.
Oh, that's great. And I just have to say, I'm just super impressed that you guys have visibility into such a complex system. It's so complex, all of the different components. And it's so cool what you all have done with all of the visibility through the software and other things, and just ordering it so that we can see what's going on in all of these different ways. I mean, just an awesome job. What a cool thing. And what a great thing for Loudoun too, in terms of not getting caught with a problem that nobody saw coming. We have so many different ways to look at all of these different components, and what a great thing. It's just fantastic. So great job. Love it.
It is really exciting.
I believe that's all I have for you folks. Certainly, if you have additional questions, I'm sorry I wasn't able to show you the full-fledged view of GIS, but our GIS mapping system is one of our crown jewels. It does work very well, despite what I'm not able to show you here. It's used by our planners, our engineers. It's used for hydraulic modeling. It's used for assets and work orders in the field. And again, just one of the highest quality data systems you'll find, I think, anywhere, frankly, in the country. We survey every one of our pipes, pumps, valves, et cetera, to survey level accuracy. So, it's really a fantastic system.
Mike, Ms. Sursakar, and then Mr. Allen have questions.
Yes. Please go.
Mike, I just want to take a moment to thank you and your whole entire team. People we may not have been able to see, team members and all the people who have worked with you to create this report. As I said, a person who is very in detail and in depth with this field. I gotta applaud you for this great presentation. You took in all the questions, the expected and the unexpected, and you delivered really well. So kudos to you and your team for that. I'm absolutely impressed. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day and a wonderful week and a year ahead. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I got to say, the credit really goes to the folks that work that are on the IT and the OT teams. They are a fantastic group of folks. You don't get to work with them every day, but some of them have been here for 15, 20 plus years, and really are dedicated to Loudoun Water, our mission, and have made all this possible. So I will pass along your thanks to them. They deserve it.
Mr. Allen?
Yeah, I want to echo everybody else. I mean, it was mind-blowing for me to see all of that integration. I knew we were pretty technology savvy, but not to the level that we just saw. And then I loved your comment, Mike, about the chart of awesomeness. I mean, how do you, that was great. That shows you how much you care about and how excited you are about the business. And I'm sure your team is the same way. So kudos to all you guys. I had one thing I wanted to add. I would love personally to get back into trap rock. I know during construction, we were led through there and saw it, but I don't think we ever really have been back in since it's been 100% complete. So I would love to get back in there at some point in the spring and do another tour just to see a lot of the, the OT stuff that you talked about. So I'm just throwing that out there. Obviously it doesn't have to be immediate, but just something to chew on, but thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm sure we can coordinate that. Yep.
That's good. Are there any other questions? Mike, it's great presentation, and I'm really glad that so many of the board members were here to see it and ask questions firsthand. So, and we really appreciate the immense amount of time it probably took to put this together. And a little bit on my side of the street, it's life's darkest moment when the demo doesn't work.
Yeah, it does happen.
It does happen. It does happen.
Risk of the business, I suppose.
But yeah, that analysis and about the business, the genuine caring about our water business really comes through, and we really appreciate that. I would like to reflect Terry's suggestion that it would be nice, and maybe that could something this committee could do when we can go live somewhere, is to have our next meeting at Trap Rock. That's probably 90 days away, so that's probably a very good idea. I think, and I'll work with Mark and others to make that happen. Any other questions? All right, Mike, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and then I think on our agenda, it's just talking about our next meetings and that famous one, adjournment. Thumbs up. Yeah, next meeting and adjournment. That's our next one. So does anybody else have any other suggestions for our committee meeting for the next quarter?
Mr. Chairman, are you talking about subject matter or are you talking about date?
Subject matter. We'll work on the dates. We try to do them early in the quarter if we can. This committee is chartered to have quarterly meetings. So.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just quickly mention, as I mentioned at the top, in the themes we've developed, what we would be looking at here in the next couple months would be around our education and outreach, and that's sort of where it fits. But this committee is built to be flexible, and so if anybody has ideas, we're always things you're thinking about. Maybe some of those fit some of the themes that we'll hit throughout the course of the year. Kind of already working on ideas for each of what those meetings will look like. But the next one here will be over the next couple of months, maybe into March, later March, that type of time frame.
Yep. Very good. I think that concludes. Oh.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sultan has a question.
I don't know what the agenda should be, but I think in future meetings of this committee, if you could get into real detail of some of the items that you mentioned, like for instance, maybe this is a little project management. I'd like to see a demonstration of specifically how we operate the project management software or something like that. Get into a little more detail of some of the things that were mentioned to see actual demonstration of how do you operate with it.
I think that's a great suggestion too. So I'll echo that.
Yeah, it's always nice to see.
Great. Yep, it's great that we'll take the ideas and we'll incorporate that as we kind of plan out the next few this year. So that's great.
And I'd also like to add my compliments to Mike for an excellent presentation.
Very good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Right. And if there, Mark Oblis, Chair, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, I just love the fact that we actually are meeting the time allotment that you scheduled, Mike. That's very impressive to talk about that much information and get it exactly to the minute. Perfect. See, technology, yeah.
You're welcome.
Mike likes precision. All right, so we just needed a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
We have a second. All in favor?
Do we have to do a voice vote?
I do have to do a roll call vote. I'm sorry. Mr. Bonfils?
Yes.
Mr. Allen? We lost Mr. Allen. Mr. Campbell?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Sultan?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. We're adjourned at 10:01.
Thanks
everyone.
Appreciate it.